when I gave birth, and I was like feeling pretty good initially, almost under this impression that my body would fall back into place naturally on its own, but quicker than what was ever realistic to think, right? So I had this expectation that I would do what I always do and things would feel good in my body. I would feel good in my own skin. And that just was not the case.
Before we begin, I want to share something special with all of you expecting parents out there. As an internationally board certified lactation consultant, I've seen firsthand how a little planning can go a long way to helping you achieve your baby feeding goals. That's why I'm offering you my free ebook. It's called Birth Practices to Support Breastfeeding, and it's a workbook. So check out the link in the description below. Welcome back to Lo's Lactation Lab. I'm your host, Lo Nigrosh. I'm an international board certified lactation consultant, or an IBCLC, a childbirth educator, and a doula, on a mission to help you feel great about the decisions you make when it comes to feeding your babies. Longtime listeners of the podcast will know that I have talked extensively about my own struggle to come to terms with what my body has looked like after having babies, and from one baby to the next, and as I've entered my 40s. And the biggest thing that I have learned over the years is learning to embrace the body that I have. And Dominique has been instrumental in helping me feel good in the body that I have right now. She is a registered dietitian who I have worked with personally. She also works with many people in the postpartum period to help them feel really good in the clothes that they have, dressing for their body, learning to think more intuitively about food and movement and eating, and being okay with the body they have while recognizing the grief that comes with a changing body after having babies. So tune in to this important conversation. I think you will walk away feeling empowered to view yourself as positively as possible. Enjoy. All right, Dominique, welcome again. I'm so glad to see you again.
Hi, Lo.
Before we get into today's topic, introduce yourself again. Anyone who wants to hear Dominique's baby feeding story can go back to the previous episode. But I'm interviewing you as a professional now.
Okay, let's dive in. So, yeah, I'm a registered dietitian. I have been for 8 years. And, I work at a private practice doing outpatient counseling one-on-one for individuals, with a anti-diet, intuitive eating approach, weight neutral. And I'm a mother and a partner and a dog mom. I love the outdoors and yeah, I like
Awesome.
funky fashion, lots of things.
Yes, I love it.
That's a big one for me.
Yeah. So I have had two other dietitians on, but I think it's worth describing what a registered dietitian is, because the world of nutrition counseling can be so convoluted and confusing. And it turns out that anyone can offer nutrition counseling and have people pay them for it without necessarily having credentials that someone might want to trust. So tell me kind of what a registered dietitian is in your view.
Yeah. So, a registered dietitian is the nutrition professional in the medical world as a medical professional. So, we complete a undergraduate degree in nutrition, which is very science heavy, psychology, counseling, all of that built in there. And we go on to do a dietetic internship, which is, in my opinion, the best comparison is a medical residency where you get experience in all the different areas where you could work as a dietitian, counseling in a hospital, food service at a school, all these different examples, WIC. And then you have to take a board certified exam, get licensed with the state, and you can then practice and accept insurance.
Yes. Okay. That's really helpful. And you mentioned at the beginning that you work from an intuitive eating, body neutral, weight neutral approach. And we've had Amanda on to talk about this. Amanda's the owner of your practice, but describe what you mean by that.
Great question. I think when we think about nutrition, and a lot of people who have been through diet cycling, fad diets, the culture around weight and health in the 90s and early 2000s, and heck, right now, around, what it looks like to be healthy, what it looks like to pursue health. And where our practice and me as a provider comes from is that it doesn't necessarily need to look like you shrinking your body equals health,
Mm.
right? There are health promoting behaviors that are health promoting no matter what size your body is. And there are many other indicators of health beyond the number on the scale.
And so when you are working with clients, you're not talking about how to lose a few more pounds or lose a lot of weight. You're talking about how do you use food and movement to improve health outcomes and feel good in your body how it is today. Is that an accurate?
We're having these very nuanced conversations.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely. Where some clients are still in their journey with pursuing weight loss and still discovering, right, this other way of promoting their health and their ambivalence between those two worlds. But yes, it's where I think therapy or, having deep emotional, mental health related conversations collides with nutrition as a science versus eating as a behavior.
Mm, mm. Okay, so I would like to talk a little bit about postpartum body image. And I have discussed this on the podcast, so I'll link that episode about my own feelings of, body grief as I had my kids. But I would love, if you are willing, for you to share your personal experience with postpartum body changes so that we can
Absolutely.
then dive into what can that mean for other people.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say around the third trimester is when I really started my to notice my body change, be it swelling, my feet, actually just swelling everywhere. And that improved initially when I gave birth, and I was like feeling pretty good initially, almost under this impression that my body would fall back into place
Oh,
naturally on its
uh-huh,
own, but quicker than what was ever realistic to think,
uh-huh.
right? Um, so I had this expectation that I would do what I always do, and things would feel good in my body. I would feel good in my own skin, and that just was not the case.
Mm. What do you think made it hard for you to feel good?
Great question. I mean, I think first of all, just the weight gain. I gained a good amount of weight that I was not able to fit in my pre-pregnancy clothing, which is normal and right? But having to buy a new wardrobe, all of that. Also seeing photos of yourself, or even just seeing yourself in the mirror and seeing your face look different to yourself, seeing your breasts and your stomach look different to yourself. You feel like a different person in
Mhm.
a lot.
Yeah. Hard is it, do you think, for and maybe I'm not phrasing this question correctly, but maybe how common is it for you to hear people who are in the postpartum period talk about wanting to fit into their clothes from before pregnancy? Do you hear this pretty frequently?
Yeah, both in clients and in my personal life, whether it be friends or family, universal.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would be lying if I didn't say I still have those pre-pregnancy clothes, right?
Mhm.
Mm, but they're no longer my dresser. They're no longer
Mhm.
my clothes.
Mhm.
Right? And yeah, so it's a journey.
Yeah, and I'll disclose that I have seen you personally as a dietitian, and, we talked a lot about body image and how I was feeling in my body and why certain thoughts come up, thought distortions or just thoughts, and how much time am I spending looking at myself in the mirror, because I'm a person who I feel good if I'm just
Mhm.
dressed and walking around and in my life, and then if I catch a glimpse, I'm like, "W," it will kind of shock me. Um, and I would love to know when you have somebody who is in this period of really grieving, and I bet a lot of our listeners can relate to this, grieving what their body looks like now and grieving the fashion sense they might have had previously before their lives were consumed by these other human beings. How do you help people to both sit in those feelings of grief and find their new normal?
Yeah, this is a great question. This is a great question. And it's something I had to figure out myself before I could help others with it. Absolutely. And I think step 1 postpartum is having your clothes fit and be comfortable and be realistic, right? Like I needed clothes that were breastfeeding friendly, button-ups, things that were accessible, right? Um, I didn't feel like investing in a bunch of new jeans. Leggings were what it was for me. That was what was comfortable. Did I feel like that embodied my own personal sense of fashion the best it could? No. No.
Mm.
Pretty basic, pretty. Are you
You're
there,
still
Lo?
here.
Okay.
You're still here.
Um, Pretty basic, and this shirt is a perfect example. This shirt is a perfect example. It is a button-up over shirt that I would throw over a breastfeeding friendly t-shirt, and bing, bam, boom, it was very easy for me. A family made this was one of the things I very universally wore, and it's ironic I wear it today on this video. It's a cozy over, right? But a family member made a comment that that shirt makes you look boxy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, right? And, being in what I do, I said, "I'd really prefer you not to make comments on my appearance, my clothing, et cetera." But not gonna lie, that made me feel uncomfortable and one of the only things at that time I felt comfortable in.
Yeah.
And as I kind of continued in my postpartum body image, progress journey, whatever you want to call it, I started to kind of realize, even if my body isn't shrinking at the rate that if I were to have a magic genie, it would, I
Mhm.
can still look cool. I
Oh,
can
wow.
still look like myself and embody the vibes I want to give off as a human being.
Mhm.
Um, and I started to, and that felt really good, and I would get compliments on things, not because it made me look slender or it was flattering, but because that's a really cool sweater, right?
Right.
And I really liked that. And I started to embrace that more and more.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that sometimes when our body is a different size than what we wished it was, I'm gonna rephrase that. I think that sometimes when our body is a different size than what we wished it was, we almost punish ourselves by wearing fashion that we don't really like.
Absolutely.
We're not willing to
Absolutely.
invest in things. We keep waiting until we can buy a smaller size of something we might like, and that's when we end up in the t-shirt, leggings, just throw whatever on, which if that's what people are comfortable in and you feel good in your body that way, great. I
Yep.
found once I started working with you and you helped me to think about What are the pieces I like? What feels good on my body? What are the things that I know, yeah, no, I don't want to try that? And what are the things that I've never tried before, like wearing a belt with a jumpsuit? You taught me that. I would have never done that
Mhm.
before. Wearing some tighter pieces underneath with a kimono or an overshirt on top. Yeah, even in the summer, with some lighter pieces, doing that layering has really helped me to feel like, you know what? My body, like it is now, deserves to feel good in the clothes I'm wearing. And when I put it on, I deserve to say to myself, you know what? This reflects me.
Yep. Yep,
And
exactly, this works me, yeah.
yeah, exactly. And I have found one of the biggest tips that you gave me, you had me measure myself, and I wrote notes in my phone on my measurements. So now whenever I'm like, oh man, I need a pair of jeans or um I need a new shirt and I'm looking on the website and I'm not sure if the sizes are going to work out, I just look in the notes app on my phone and I have my measurements right there. And that works so much better than trying to squeeze into the size whatever because I'm hopeful that size whatever will fit.
Everyone knows women's sizing is just bonkers. It makes no
Mhm.
logical sense. It's not by measurement like men's sizing is for the
Mhm.
most especially with bottoms, and it's this big guessing game, you know? So, everyone shopping online should probably know their measurements, but especially if your body just changed and you're not quite sure or what with a new specific brand that you've never purchased before. Yeah.
I think knowing your measurements is a little more neutral than weighing yourself. For me, the weight on the scale is way more triggering
Mhm.
than knowing the measurement around my waist and my hips and my bust.
Mhm.
I don't know
And
if
you
you
know
hear
that
that from other people.
it's not universal. It's
Okay.
certainly not universal. There are some people who choose not to see their measurements
Mhm.
and to choose to have the clothing ordered for them in the size that would fit them best
Mhm.
because it's too distressful, to
Mm.
see those numbers or sizes. So, it definitely is individual, but I agree that we have a certain connotation with a scale that is different than measurements,
Yeah.
and personally do notice that for myself.
Yeah, but no, I'm really glad that you point that out, that some people, it's better for their own mental health to not know any of that information about the size of their body. And I know for me, I have started to, like when I get weighed at the doctor, I just turn the other way on the scale, let them write it down. That way, if they need it for meds or whatever, but I just tell the nurse, you know, don't tell me. I
Yep,
don't.
exactly. We all have a certain level of tolerance for that distress. For some
Mhm.
people, not be distressing at all. For some people, it's a 10 out of 10, right? So we kind of have to scale that level of distress before I would even recommend for somebody to take their own measurement.
Mhm. Right. And how do you help somebody who they're in the early postpartum period, none of their clothes are fitting. They probably do need to get clothes that are really easy and go with everything, and they have a new baby, so they are on a budget. How do you
Mhm.
help them to figure out how they can dress themselves to feel really good out in the world and recognize that they're in this new stage of life where money is just flying out the window all the time?
Yeah, truthfully, Amazon, I know, one of the many evils of the world that exists, but it exists and it is convenient for postpartum mothers and it is accessible and the sizing is pretty reliable. There are many reviews, generally accessible price-wise,
Mhm.
Amazon. Also thrift shopping, just popping into the thrift store and being able to grab a bunch of things, throw them in your cart, and give
Mhm.
a brief breakdown. You know, it doesn't need to be as complex as going into a dressing taking your measurements, going into a dressing room, et cetera, et cetera. You know, I think just having drawers in your dresser that are filled with clothes that you can put on your current body and that meet your needs and feel relatively decent in that early postpartum, just prioritize that,
Mhm.
right? We can always accessorize, we can always do our nails or makeup or other ways to feel fancy, but to have the basics in your current size that are comfortable and just realistic is, I would say, first and foremost.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And so anyone who is listening, if you are fitting into the same 2 or 3 things every day because you don't want to buy a new wardrobe, even if the number on the scale got down to what it was before, it does not mean you will be wearing the same size clothing because your body has changed.
Great point. I hear from a lot of clients just bone structure and things
Mhm.
like that have shifted in a way that their previous clothes don't fit or don't work for them anymore. And just treat yourself a bit, even
Mhm.
if it's littlest bit and funds are tight. You know, we're in tough times right now. Things are hard to afford for many families, but
Mhm.
you, as a mother, are worthy of feeling like you can dress your body.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And then for people who are in this stage and they really cannot find clothing that they feel good about, where what can they do? How can they get over the hump? Because my kids are 10 and 6, and I really have not felt good in my own clothing since before my second daughter was born, and she's almost 7. So
Okay.
I think it and I had gone, I'm a thrifter. I had bought plenty of clothes I
Sure.
in the years, but I did not feel really good about, "Okay, this is my basic wardrobe, this is my style, this is what I like to wear now," until this year when I started working with you. So where can people go to get the same support I got from you? Because we did a lot of body image work, and also it was really practical, like, "Let's jump on Amazon, and I'll show you what I mean, and I'll help you pick out the size that might be right." Um as we discussed those body image difficulties.
Absolutely. I think firstly, like I said, having those comfortable clothes and what have you, I'll say I offer the support I do regarding body image and dressing your body because it doesn't quite exist
Mhm,
in an accessible way. So that's relatively unique. And I do offer those services. But if you're kind of on your own and you're seeking, like, you're just feeling lost in the sauce,
mhm,
start with board and start with asking yourself, what would younger you think is cool?
mhm,
What would middle school you, high school you, college age you, whatever age you feel is just a piece of clothing that really embodied you?
mhm,
And go from there. Also think about necklaces, earrings, things that shoes, things that aren't related necessarily to the size of your body that represent you as a human
mm,
and what you can do with that.
mm. I have noticed a shift in my own crowd perusing. You know how we all look at each other out and about? And I
Sure.
think before, I used to notice people who were quote unquote an ideal size in my mind. Like, "Ooh, I
Mhm.
like that outfit. She pieced that together." But then if I tried that, it wouldn't look the same. And I have
Mhm.
made a shift to start noticing the fashion of all different sizes of people and noticing what I like and what I don't like on various bodies, not to be judgmental, but to think, could I incorporate that into my
Yeah.
life? And it's been really helpful for me to kind of broaden my lens and see fashion and see people dressing their bodies in ways that feel good to them, regardless of their body size. And
Yep.
speaking of Amazon, I love that for many brands, you can choose a model size.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot more options with that and even filtering by body size on Pinterest when you search for outfits. You know,
Mhm.
cool. It's really cool, but, you know, yes, clothing should be comfortable and functional, but it also does impact how we feel. I love the term dopamine dressing, or just dressing to make yourself happy, not necessarily aesthetically pleasing to the average eye, you know? And yeah, it's a different just a different way of thinking about it.
Yeah, yeah. I love that term, dopamine dressing.
Mhm. One example for me, I'll give you a funny little example for me, is, have you ever seen one of those T-shirts that are like, a specific animal, like a wolf or something like that, and it's like looks like a little bit mystical and it's almost
Mhm.
tied.
Right,
I
right.
forget the exact name of the type of shirt.
Like
But
Napoleon Dynamite, right? Like, kinda
yes,
okay.
yes, I am a fanatic for those shirts. There's a fair I go to every year here in Western Massachusetts called the Big E.
Uh-huh.
Can't wait for the month for the Big E. Um, but they have these shirts, and I love getting myself a funky animal T-shirt, and would someone be like, "You're so flattering and beautiful in that T-shirt." No, probably not,
Uh-huh.
but they'll be like, "That T-shirt's so fun," or,
Mhm.
"I just personally enjoy looking at it."
Mhm.
So, that's just one example, but there's many ways that, you don't need to, um, please everyone else around you. You can simply please yourself.
Mhm. I think the other thing that has really helped me is, recognizing that jeans don't have to have a button and a zipper
Mhm.
because our bodies are variable from one day to the next day.
Got drawstring jeans on right now. I
Yep.
love them. Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
That has been really
Should
helpful to me to find brands that are not maternity clothes that have waistbands because maternity clothes are made to show off your belly.
Right, right. And it's our fashion industry is not designed for the average
Mhm.
woman, right? It is designed for a beauty ideal
Mhm.
that is not realistic for a vast majority. And so for many women and just people in general, and not even specific to mothers or postpartum people, have to do a lot more digging than is
Uh-huh.
enjoyable for them on their own
Mm.
to find clothes that they feel like represent them and fit them. And
Mhm.
so where, I really enjoy supporting. Yeah.
Yeah. So if people want to work with you, they're thinking, you know what? I could use some talk about my body image. You can also talk about food and movement and all those
Yeah.
things that we worry about, but also put to the wayside when we become parents,
Yes.
um, in a way that is accepting of how people are right now.
Mm,
How can people work with you?
great question. Two options. One is to work one-on-one with me through Happy Valley Nutrition. We can do both or either. Nutrition counseling, you're working on your relationship with movement postpartum, um, fashion, body image. We can do a consult like that.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing both your personal experiences and your experiences with coming to terms with our bodies as they are. We all deal with it. It's so hard with so many unreasonable expectations out there. And I thank you so much for the work that you do for your clients, the work you've done for me, and for agreeing to come on and talk about this.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Lo, and it's always a pleasure to work with you. So, yeah, I'm just so excited to talk with you in a different context.
Yeah, awesome. Great. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Having kids changes us so much, both internally and externally. And it is important to feel like the clothing that we have makes us feel more confident in who we are as people. It's important that you feel good going out into the world as you care for your children, both in your home and outside of it. I hope this conversation with Dominique has inspired you to think about how you can feel good as you are right now. I know every time I talk to Dominique, I get the opportunity to rethink some old patterns, some old ways of thinking about myself that are sometimes hard to get rid of. So get out there, feel confident in the body that you have, because you are doing amazing things, feeding babies with milk from your body.